In the last video, we learned a bit about exchange processes, what exchange relations are, how the exchange relation rather than the individual can function as the basis for sociological analysis, and how exchange relations, situated within networks, can impact the relative power and dependency of individuals within that network. In this video, I want to look at some explanations for another important feature of exchange networks, commitment. Commitment describes how strongly an actor is tied to an exchange relation. High commitment means that an actor will stick to an exchange relation even when there are viable alternatives. That is, even when they can get their resource from other exchange relations. High commitment also means that actors will be more willing to provide resources to others in the social unit without the expectation of an immediate reward. And it means that they'll be more willing to engage in productive exchanges. That is, exchanges that require the joint input of multiple actors. Within exchange theory, there have been two attempts to explain the emergence of commitment. Linda Muln and her colleagues have offered an account of commitment that emphasizes the importance of exchange structures and risk. Ed Lawler and his colleagues have developed an alternative explanation that links positive emotional experiences caused by exchange to higher perceptions of cohesion. We're going to look at both theories. Muln argued that commitment is influenced by the structure of exchange transactions that make up an exchange relation. This argument makes a distinction between behavioral commitment, how consistently individuals participate in an exchange relation, and affective commitment, how the actor feels about their exchange relation. Affective commitment is influenced by the exchange type and by behavioral commitment, while behavioral commitment is influenced by the power dynamic of the exchange relation. For our discussion today, we're only going to focus on the top causal chain. We're going to ignore the wrinkle that power adds to this dynamic. But if you want to know about how power works in this process, just let me know. I'll send you an article that deals with it. So our focus here is on how exchange types influence trust and affective commitment. There are several different types of exchanges, all of which are explained in this week's readings. But Muln's explanation and test of affective commitment is really concerned with two types of direct exchange. So I'll review those here. Direct transactions are exchanges that take place between two actors. Some resource flows from one actor to another without any intermediary. When we talk about exchange relations, this is probably the kind of relation you're thinking about. A gives something to B, who gives something back to A. We can break down direct exchanges into two different types: negotiated exchange and reciprocal exchange. In a negotiated exchange, actors come together for the purpose of exchange and work out the details of the exchange before they actually go through with the process. The exchange is said to be a joint decision between two actors that are involved. This type of exchange only happens if both parties find the terms acceptable, so you often find bargaining in a negotiated exchange. If one actor makes a demand that the other does not like, then the exchange doesn't happen. In the business world, negotiated exchanges are common. Contracts are an obvious example. Before a contract is signed, the actors involved in the exchange discuss the detail, how much of what resource each actor is willing to provide. And if one party does not like the contract, then they don't sign. The exchange doesn't happen. This means that negotiated exchanges are relatively low risk. If you don't like the terms of the contract, then you can walk away from the contract before you actually lose much. You enter into this type of exchange relation all of the time. Signing a lease for an apartment is an example of a negotiated exchange. You and your potential landlord negotiate the terms of the lease, and if you both agree, you enter into the exchange relationship. You give them money, and they let you use their property as a residence. You don't start paying rent until you sign a lease, until you agree to the terms. Did you know that you can negotiate the terms of leases? In college towns, I found a lot of landlords will put ridiculous things in their leases. Stuff like redecorating fees, or terms that require the tenant to perform upkeep on the building, or absurdly high security deposits despite the credit history of the tenant. I think that college town landlords are really counting on the fact that a lot of undergraduates are renting for their first time, and so they don't really realize that leases are negotiable. But they are. If you don't like something in the lease, then you don't have to agree with it. And often you can ask landlords to change a lease before you sign it. Reciprocal exchanges are exchanges that happen when one actor provides a resource without any knowledge of the other actor's contributions. Unlike negotiated exchanges, in a reciprocal exchange, actors direct a resource towards another person without knowing how the other person will respond. This sort of exchange relation might seem unwise, but it's actually quite common. Giving a friend a ride to the airport is an example of a reciprocal exchange. Generally, people do not drive their friends to the airport with the expectation that they immediately provide some benefit in return. Instead, this type of exchange is less formal. You might give your friend a ride to the airport, and then later, when you need help with something going on in your life, you might expect your friend to help you. There's no guarantee that they will help you, but there is an expectation that they will reciprocate. In exchange relationships like these, repeated failures to reciprocate do upset people. And repeated failures of reciprocation generally cause people to cut an exchange tie. An important characteristic of reciprocal exchanges is that they're more risky than negotiated exchanges. Most people don't immediately cut off reciprocal exchange ties from a single failed exchange. That means that it's actually possible to lose a substantial amount of some resource before you cut your losses. Despite the relatively high level of risk, this exchange is common. Reciprocal exchanges often make up the bulk of exchange activity between friends. You help me move, I watch your pets. You give me a ride to the airport, I help you fix your car. No single transaction in this chain of transactions was done with the expectation of immediate reward. Instead, there's only a general expectation that past transactions be reciprocated by future transactions. Mullen points out that most exchanges involve a great deal of uncertainty. When we enter into an exchange, we can never be completely certain that the transaction will go the way we want it to. That uncertainty introduces risk to exchange transactions. The core argument that Mullen and her colleagues developed is that higher risk creates opportunities to demonstrate more trustworthiness. And successful demonstrations of trustworthiness create greater affective commitment. In other words, you are more likely to like an exchange partner if they've demonstrated their trustworthiness in past exchanges. Exchange partners have a greater opportunity to demonstrate trustworthiness in transactions that are more risky. Recall that reciprocal exchanges are risky. One partner in the exchange initiates the exchange without any guarantee that the other will reciprocate. If the other partner responds by reciprocating, then they've shown that they're trustworthy in a high-risk situation. If they respond by failing to reciprocate, then they've shown that they're not trustworthy. The risk that is inherent to reciprocal exchange transactions is what gives actors involved in those relations the opportunity to demonstrate their trustworthiness. If two actors are involved in an exchange relation that includes mostly reciprocal transactions, and they demonstrate their trustworthiness to each other, then trust should be high between the two, and that high level of trust will cause greater affective commitment. Compare this situation to negotiated exchanges. Even though negotiated exchanges carry with them some uncertainty, in negotiated exchanges, the risk is much lower. The exchange happens as a joint decision between two actors, and if they don't come to agreement, then they don't lose any of their resource. This means that they know in advance what they're getting out of the exchange and how their partner will react to the exchange. The fact that negotiated exchanges keep risk low means that there are fewer opportunities to demonstrate trustworthiness. And this means that actors are less likely to develop stronger affective commitment to their exchange partner. That's because any pro-social behavior in a negotiated exchange can be attributed to the conditions of the exchange, the joint decision-making process, not to the actor's trustworthiness. So, according to Mullen's argument, the greater the risk, the greater the opportunity to demonstrate trustworthiness. Successful demonstrations of trustworthiness create more affective commitment. Reciprocal exchange involves more risk and so offers a greater chance to demonstrate trustworthiness when compared to negotiated exchange. So exchange relations that are characterized by more reciprocal exchanges should result in more trust and more effective commitment, provided that the actors involved in the relationship actually demonstrate trustworthiness. Lawler and his colleagues present a different argument. According to this line of reasoning, commitment is impacted not by the opportunity to demonstrate trust, but rather by a transformation of an exchange relationship. Exchange relationships begin with self-interested parties entering into exchanges for personal benefit. But as a history of successful exchanges accumulates, actors involved in these relations begin to think of themselves as members of a common social unit. In Lawler's argument, what matters is whether exchanges are successful and what sorts of emotions those exchanges create. Let's look at this a little closer. Just like Moulton, Lawler points out that exchange relations entail a great deal of uncertainty. When individuals enter into an exchange, they often do not know if they'll receive rewards for their exchange activity. So when exchanges are successful, actors involved in the exchange relation will experience positive emotions. This process works in much the same way that group success at a task elicits positive emotion in group members. For example, when a football team scores a goal, team members feel good about their joint success. In the exact same way, a successful exchange in a highly uncertain environment will cause actors in an exchange relation to experience positive emotions. Lawler and his colleagues argue that when actors involved in successful exchanges experience positive emotions, they try to understand the source of those emotions. In an exchange relation, actors can attribute their positive emotions to themselves, to others, or to the exchange relation as a social unit. An actor attributing emotion to themselves may conclude that their good feelings were because of their performance in an exchange. For example, I feel good because I contributed a lot to that exchange. If an actor attributes their experiences to others, they may draw a different conclusion. I feel good because of the work that my partner did. Finally, when actors attribute their emotions to the social unit, their understandings of the situation will implicate the exchange relation itself. I feel good because of what we accomplished as a group. It is this third situation, attributing emotion to the exchange relation, that will increase cohesion. When actors attribute positive emotions to the exchange relation itself, they begin to think of themselves as members of a group rather than as self-interested parties. And consequently, their affective commitment to the exchange relation increases. Lawler calls this process relational cohesion. Much of Lawler's theory is interested in understanding how the structural conditions of an exchange relation cause relational cohesion. According to his argument, to get relational cohesion, an exchange relation needs to be characterized by A, a series of successful exchanges, and B, a structure that encourages actors to attribute their positive emotions to the group rather than to themselves or to others. And it turns out that negotiated exchanges satisfy both of those requirements. As we've already seen, negotiated exchanges are a joint decision-making process. The fact that negotiated exchanges require the joint effort of at least two actors means that it's difficult to attribute a successful exchange to only one actor in the transaction. Both actors need to contribute to the exchange in order for it to succeed. And the contributions of both actors are readily apparent to each other at the onset of the exchange. Compare that to reciprocal exchange. In reciprocal exchanges, it may not be obvious whether or not another actor has contributed anything, and their reciprocation often occurs long after the exchange activity is initiated. In reciprocal exchange, the actual flow of resources, even in successful exchanges, is disconnected with the onset of exchange activity. And so it's a lot easier to attribute positive feelings to self. I helped my friend out, so I feel good about myself. Or to other. My friend helped me, so I feel good. Than to the group. My friend helped me because 2 months ago I helped him, so I feel good because I am part of this group. In the long run, the success of negotiated exchanges are more likely to be apparent to actors. And that's because the entire exchange happens as a single transactional event. So an exchange relation that's characterized by a series of negotiated exchanges is more likely to generate positive emotions in the actors. And those actors are more likely to attribute that emotion to the exchange relation. And ultimately, that increases commitment to the group. So notice how this theory argues that negotiated exchanges will produce, on average, more commitment to an exchange relation than reciprocal exchanges. Moulton's theory argues the opposite, that reciprocal exchanges produce more commitment than negotiated exchanges. So this isn't my area of social psychology. I don't spend a lot of my time following the developments of exchange theory, but as far as I have read, this question is still not resolved. It's an open question as to whether negotiated or reciprocal exchanges have a stronger effect on commitment. It may be situational. In some exchange networks, negotiated exchanges may have a stronger effect, while in others, reciprocal exchanges may have a stronger effect. So that's exchange theory. It is a perspective that emphasizes exchange relations as the unit of analysis rather than the individual. And this body of theory has been used to explain a great deal of social phenomena, including a precise understanding of social power and an explanation for how groups cohere and how trust develops within these exchange groups. Alright, that's all for now. I'll see you in the next video.